Viking has done something incredible for the river cruise industry. They've made river cruising a household name, similar to the way that Kleenex became the word for facial tissues. But here's the thing that most travelers don't realize. Viking is one of a dozen English forward river cruise brands, and for many travelers, one of the other 11 might actually be a better fit. That's what this brand conversation series is all about. And today we're featuring one most Americans have never heard of. Hi there, my name is William with River Cruise Experts. Shelley and I specialize in river cruising with 12 English forward brands, and we've personally been aboard 10 of those brands so far. We start every client relationship from a consultative standpoint. Which brand fits you as the traveler? Each brand has a distinct personality, but there are some overlaps. Segmenting the client into the exact right one does take a true conversation. And that's why we're building this series to help you get started in understanding what those different personalities are going to look like and how we can best help you find the right fit for you. So today we're going to visit with Riviera Travel. They've been in business for about 40 years, mostly selling in English markets around the world before coming to America, and they just recently entered the USA market here in the last few years. So stick around closer to the end where we will ask a few questions that are very specific to the brand and what makes them so special. So let's bring Sydney into the conversation. So to help us understand what makes Riviera different, I brought Sydney, Regional Sales Director at Riviera Travel. Sydney, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, William. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Great. So before we dive into Riviera, I want our viewers to get up for just a moment to understand a little bit of your background, what you came to the industry with, a little bit about your history. I know you shared with me that your dad had a travel agency, so you kind of grew up there. And then early in your career, you worked with a mass market brand before coming over to Riviera. What about Riviera specifically drew you to want to work with them?
So you mentioned mass market brand, and so coming from a very large cruise company, it really makes you start to really see that red tape. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But William, I think I've shared this with you. I have big goals. And
Right.
I need to learn as much as possible in order to reach those goals. And it's very hard sometimes to do so when you are at a large corporate company. So one of my favorite things one of my biggest draws to working at Riviera was genuinely the fact that I would have more of a stay. It's almost more of a startup mentality, which I know we'll talk more about that later on. But it gives me some of the best learning experiences that I've ever had. I'm taking on more responsibility and I'm growing the brand awareness, which is genuinely my favorite part of the job. And I'm enjoying doing so because it is a great brand. And I know as I share with your viewers, they're going to learn to fall in love with it as well. But yes, to your point, I did also grow up in the cruise industry. I took my first river cruise when I was 13. I've seen a lot of the world and I am so grateful for it. But I think I've told you at a certain point, you realize you can't continue traveling on your parents' curtails. And so you have to figure out the best way to do so for yourself and for your family later on. So
Right.
it was a no-brainer for me to get into this industry, and I absolutely love river cruising. So that's another big
Awesome.
piece.
Fantastic. So I know we're going to talk about it here in just a couple of minutes, but you mentioned that it feels like a startup, which is kind of an interesting point since Riviera is a decade older than Viking. And so tell me a little bit about that culture, what makes it unique, and how does that impact more to the consumer, the traveler, than it does for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I say we're very fortunate startup is because we've actually been based out of the UK for 40 years. So we've been operating for 41 years, but it was only within the last 2 to 3 years that they decided to sort of make that push into the US market. So, fun fact for you all, Riviera is actually the #1 leading river cruise line in the UK and has been for years. So that brand, the product, it's established. It has an incredible Trustpilot score. Honestly, it's 4.7 and it was 4.6 when I started. So it just continues to go up, which is a
Nice.
huge testament to the guest satisfaction, repeat customers, which is a big thing that we're trying to now translate over to the US customer as well. So working with travel advisors like yourself to share everything that we know about the brand, you to build your trust in the brand. And the best part about it is it's sort of like this, starting to hear it through the grapevine as more and more people start to learn about Riviera. The more people talk about it, the more educated travel advisors become and being able to offer Riviera as an option when they are thinking about river cruising and presenting that to their clients.
Sure. So, if someone were to go to a very large travel show that's just made up of everything, all inclusive, so the large mass market, and there was a table over in the corner for Riviera Travel, people might come up to you and say, I've never heard of Riviera. What is it? Can you give me kind of a 60-second version of what that would look like and how that pitch would go?
Oh, absolutely. So, William, the best way to describe Riviera is an upper premium river cruise line, however, at premium level pricing. So what that means is we are very similar from a luxury upper premium standpoint with the quality, the food, the service to say an Ama Waterways or an Avalon. Very similar to Ama. However, we are priced very similarly to a Viking, sometimes actually lower than a Viking once you think about all of the different things that you do have to tack on. Things you have to tack on would be excursions. With us, we do include everything. The only thing that we do not include is your gratuities. Those are optional for you, and that includes beverages from 10 a.m. to midnight. Another big way that we really stand out in the market is not only our groups program, but we are number one for solo travelers. So if you are a solo traveler out there, we have over 65 different solo-only sailings at no single supplement for those solos out there. You can hear me. And I'll stop there because that's really what I want to end with, because the Solo Travelers program is really incredible and just continuing to grow.
Fantastic. It's been fantastic. And you're giving away our secret number 8, but we'll get there here in just a few moments. So you mentioned quite a bit about the fares, so we'll skip over that question a little bit. Let's talk about the ships. The Scylla ships, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Scylla are to die for. They are absolutely stunning. They're beautiful. And when I was at the River Cruise Expo in 2025, Tauck and Riviera were parked next to one another, pretty much on purpose, I'm going to guess, and found that they looked quite similar. That obviously, they're both Scylla ships, and I found both of them to be stunning. But Tauck is a ultra luxury brand with an ultra luxury price point. So, kind of compare a little bit of how that parallel might look. We certainly have some people that might be interested in that Tauck experience, but don't have the Tauck wallet. And so how could Riviera kind of bridge that gap for the things that they're looking for and have that premium ship experience, but come back to the Riviera brand?
Absolutely. And to that point, yes, we lease our ships from the exact same manufacturer, Scylla, as Tauck River Cruises. So our newest ships right now that, to your point, are absolutely stunning. They almost look identical to Tauck's. And you already touched on it. They do have this white glove service that I think they call the Tauck experience. And that's not something that we would say that we offer. So that is its whole other world. But when we're thinking about the overall value, and I touched on, we're an upper premium product at premium level pricing. If you're thinking about an ultra luxury brand and you've never seen a Riviera ship, but we're sitting here saying they look almost identical, and you compare price points, you would maybe say, oh, wow, the ship looks like absolutely stunning. I can't believe it's this price point. I can't believe the value that I am getting out of it. And at the end of the day, I feel like that is really one of those wow factors that we kind of just keep getting to add to, because when you lease ships from a manufacturer, there's a lot of benefits to it. And one of them being you're going to have a very young fleet. So we have one of the youngest fleets in the industry, because when one of our ships gets old and you would typically see them go to, say, a dry dock, we don't take a ship to a dry dock. We replace that ship with a newer ship. So our oldest ship is 2017. We currently have 15 ships. We'll have 16 by the end of 2028. And I know that number is only going to continue to grow. But all of our ships are beautiful. Yes, the new ones, which there's about 5 of them out right now and more coming, are beyond stunning. Absolutely beautiful. But that does not say that the rest of our fleet is not also bright, shiny, and beautiful, and still young. So really all around, you can't go wrong on any of our ships.
Back in 2025, when I got to get on to the William Wordsworth, that was built in 2018, as I understand. I thought it was a beautiful ship. It looked better than some of the others that were newer from some of the other brands. So just kind of a nod to the care that is provided to them, and just the enriching warm tones that really brought that alive. So let's pivot a little bit to who is Riviera for. Let's talk a little bit about the style, some of the options, and who this is going to be best for. What does the Riviera traveler look like? Not so much from a demographic standpoint, but like the travel personality, how they like to do their excursions, what do they care about, how do they like to travel, etc.
Absolutely. And this is where I really have to continue to hone in on solo travelers, because this is such a big program for us. Like I mentioned, we do have over 65 different solo only sailings, and that is one person per cabin. However, this is the fun part. The ship's crew remains at full capacity. So if you're a solo, you're sailing on a half capacity ship with a full crew. That guest to crew ratio is one of the best you're ever going to get,
Right.
just about. And then again, we're not charging extra in order to do so. On that personality standpoint with that, you run into a lot of solo travelers, and this is something that I learned while being at Riviera, that there's so many out there. Some of them really don't mind sailing and having a supplement, but there are so many that just simply don't want to sail with a ship full of couples. And to that point, I completely understand it. Sometimes I say that Riviera could be a matchmaking company at the end of the day, because I have heard some really beautiful love stories come out of it. But also, if you just want to ditch your husband at home and still have a room and not pay extra, you're also able to do that as a solo traveler. I will say, I do have to mention, it is it's great for groups because it's affordable for all income levels. So when you're thinking about purchasing and you think about all-inclusivity, Viking is all-inclusive, Ama is all-inclusive, Avalon is all-inclusive, okay, but to what extent? We all say it, but we actually mean it. And so having that value of, okay, from 10 a.m. to midnight, I'm going to be able to order whatever drinks I want, and I don't have to take my wallet out. Again, that is something that matters to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're dropping $6,000 per person. Still, when you drop that amount of money and then you're told you have to pay extra in order to order a glass of wine outside of happy hour, that is something that absolutely matters to our guests, which is another reason why groups work out so well, because to your point, not everybody can afford to go on a Tauck River cruise or AMA, but it's still going to have that great premium or upper premium experience as well. But from a demographic standpoint, I have to say that the age is only continuing to drop, because I personally am obsessed with river cruising. I am 28. My boyfriend of 29 is also obsessed with river cruising, and I'm trying to get all of my friends on a river cruise because I see the value, and it's also one of my favorite ways to see Europe. So I think Riviera is for everybody. The people, and you're going to ask me this anyways, but I think the people that it is not for is that person that is looking for that ultra luxury experience. Also, we do tend to have a limited number of more active excursions. So we do have excursions included at every single port, but there are some cruise lines or river cruise lines that do focus on that active state. So while we are continuing to add more, if that is specifically what you are going for and you want to do hiking all day and bike tours and go golfing, that might not necessarily be what you do with Riviera if you want it included. Again, you can still add it on, but I would say that the biggest thing we see is just not the ultra luxury consumer who really wants that extra tiered level of service.
Right. And we all know that there's another great big brand that's going to be coming to the market here quite soon. I think is really going to help drop the average age across the entire industry. And Viking, that's not who I'm talking about, but Viking, on the other hand, has nobody under 18 as a limit. And I do believe that, as you said, that the average age is going to continue to drop, and that's an excellent thing. Just the form of travel and the way to get around and see Europe or wherever the destination is, it's just a fantastic way to go. You can sleep while you're moving, and it wakes up into a beautiful new destination for you every single day, and you didn't have to worry about any of the transportation logistics, checking out a hotel, etc. So that's definitely perfect. Yeah.
This is just how passionate I am about river cruising. If you've done a Mediterranean or Baltic Capitals ocean cruise, of course you're only hitting those capital cities, which you want to hit those capital cities. Those are the big tourist destinations. But what I love about river cruising is not only do you get to spend extra time in those destinations and see them, sometimes you get to have an overnight there. You get to experience the city at night, which you wouldn't be able to do on an ocean cruise. Or if you are unpacking once, that's the only way to do it. But then you get to go to all those off the beaten path places. So in a river cruise, you really get more of that cultural immersion, which I feel like a lot of people, including myself, are really looking for in this day and age and are only going to continue to look for. So if I pull up to some random city I've never heard of in Holland and the signs don't translate to English, that is a good place for me to be. It is peaceful and it gives you just a completely new outlook on the world. And yes, you can imagine, I call river cruising magical because as you're sailing down, you are now watching, whether it's the Douro, the Danube, watching palaces go by, vineyards, going through the Alps. There's just things that you really can't even put into words unless you've experienced it.
Right. So what are some of the primary itineraries? I know Riviera to this point has been all primarily Europe. What are some of the itineraries that are the strongest for the brand?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the Blue Danube, or the Danube, is Riviera's #1 selling itinerary. It is because it's also #1 for first-time cruisers, because the Danube really does encompass a little bit of everything. So it has the palaces, it has the castles, it has the history, the art, the architecture, the vineyards. So if you're first time to a river cruiser, we put you on the Danube, William will put you on the Danube on a river cruise ship, and it's going to be one of the best experiences you've ever had, from all different areas. Because you'll get to see Bratislava places, you'll get to see Vienna, you'll get to see Budapest, which are all amazing cities, and you'll get to spend a little bit extra time there. So the Danube, another thing that really stands out for us. So everybody does some of their itineraries a little bit different. For us, our Danube is round trip Budapest. And we do that specifically because of flights. And because if you were to actually end lower down on the river, it would take you hours to get to an airport and then fly a million other airports in order to get to your destination.
Yes.
So when you're doing round trip Budapest, it makes that travel a lot easier. And whether even if you're on vacation, you're having a very relaxing time. At the end of it, you don't want to spend it on a bus trying to get to the airport is for much longer than you have to. I will also go ahead. Mm-hmm.
On that round trip Budapest, so you're picking up Bratislava, you're hitting Vienna. Are you getting to Melk and Dürnstein, yes. Linz?
Mm-hmm. And
do you get as far as Linz?
Salzburg, yeah.
Oh, awesome! So that's the best of the itinerary. Yes. I mean, you're pissed. Oh, yeah. You're missing out just in Bavaria is all, and then making that round trip back. I think that's a stunning itinerary.
It is.
The Danube is my wife and I's favorite. We love the diversity of everything that each of the different ports had to offer. We love the Rhine. The Rhine is magical for all the castles, and everybody gravitates towards that first, generally, not always. But the Danube really struck us with that diverse landscape and just found it to be absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. And I will say another itinerary, and there are quite a few different things that we do differently, but another big one is our Rhine cruise to Switzerland. So a lot of the different river cruise lines, they go and they just sort of stop in Switzerland. You don't really have any time there. It's more just like a hello and then immediate turnaround goodbye. If you sail on our Rhine cruise to Switzerland, which I would say is our second most popular itinerary, then you actually get to spend the entire day in Switzerland. So I've still not been to Switzerland yet, but I want to go. Honestly, it's probably one of the highest things on my bucket list outside of Japan, Vietnam, and Cambodia. But I'm looking forward to it so much. And that's just, again, one of those ways that as a travel advisor, you know how to position. If someone wants to go on the Rhine, they want more time in Switzerland, maybe that's a good opportunity for you to, of course, bring up Riviera to your guests.
Sure.
We do have the first ever itinerary outside of Europe coming next year. We'll be sailing on the Mekong River, doing Vietnam and Cambodia, hence why I mention those, because I want to go so badly, and I'm really looking forward to it. But that's going to be our very first boutique ship. So it will hold a total of 48 passengers, which very, very small, as you can imagine. But it's pretty much all suites, and it is one of our most luxurious ships yet. So it will be a 14-day itinerary. It's going to take you through absolutely every beautiful part of these destinations, and I really can't wait to tell you more about it later on, because there's going to be even more amazing things coming out about it.
We have another video scheduled here in a couple of months once a few more details of the Mekong itinerary gets announced, and we're quite excited about that. My wife and I are actually looking at Riviera for our first Mekong trip for fall of next year, so we're personally excited about those details as well.
I know someone at Riviera who could maybe give you a cute discount.
I think that would be awesome. Maybe we'll have some people that will want to come along with us as well.
You know what? That's the best way. The best way is to sail with other people. It really is.
Yeah.
It's one of the most fun
We've done that a
parts
couple of times. We've got some groups coming up here in 2027. We're trying to make this one into another one. And excited for just a couple of more details to come out about the itinerary so we can pick a date. So that's exciting stuff there. As far as price points, so some people, are curious as to where does this fit. You mentioned Alma Waterways, you mentioned Avalon, we've talked about Viking, we've mentioned Tauck. It's definitely in the middle of all of those, but do you want to kind of see where Riviera tries to place themselves or where they see themselves inside of the pricing tier, and more practically what justifies that difference? I know that there's a lot more inclusions that you mentioned, and those are fantastic. They're some of the better ones among the brands that we've talked about for sure. But where does Riviera really see themselves in terms of price?
I think when I explained it just as the upper premium product at premium level pricing, that's really our goal. We want to be able to offer an upper premium experience to someone who is used to paying premium pricing, which is why we are very similar to a Viking. So it's the aspect of, we're not cheap by any means, but we are affordable, and it's that overall value. So our price point is extremely similar to a Viking. And then you do think about all of those things that are included at the end of the day. But we are specifically, one of our goals is to offer that upper premium level experience and not have every single person really need to pay premium, upper premium level pricing for it. So that's, I guess, one of those big things that we're just trying to do, and it's another way that we differentiate ourselves. And another reason why a lot of people have been turning to Riviera, because they get so much more out of their experience for a very similar cost. It's kind of an amazing, like, mainstream cruise line if you're thinking about it, but it's for everybody, and I only want to educate everybody on the experience, because not everybody knows about it yet, and they don't know exactly what they're missing and what they can get for a very similar price.
Perfect. Sydney, I want to take a real quick pause here. If you're watching this and thinking, I didn't even know Riviera existed, what else am I possibly missing? That's the exact conversation that we have with each client every single day. We actually serve a dozen English word brands similar to Riviera on all the European rivers and rivers around the world. Each one has a very distinct personality, as you're learning here, and finding the right one to fit the right guest is actually going to be a lot more valuable through a conversation than through a Google search. If you want more in-depth analysis of Riviera or any of these other brands, there's a link in the description below or a QR code on the screen to connect with us. There's absolutely a free consultation. There's no pressure, just an honest conversation about what fits how you particularly travel. So back to you, Sydney. I've got a couple of more questions, and then we'll cruise on through the day. You mentioned a couple of weeks ago, cruise on through. Yeah, we heard the pun, right?
Yes.
So you mentioned a couple of weeks ago that Riviera has a new CEO and bringing a different background to the brand. What can you share about what that looks like? What are some of the things that they're wanting to bring into Riviera to help elevate it to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all very exciting things, I will say. So one of my favorite things about Riviera is how hands-on the leadership is. So our new CEO started about, I want to say, like 7 months ago now. And within his first 3 months, he flew from the UK, which is where he's based, to the US and had 2-hour conversation with our entire sales team, asking us about our thoughts, what we think of the brand, what we think is working, because we really are that engine of expansion into North America. So already him having the insights to want to ask us for our opinions, ask the travel advisors who work with the guests on a daily basis. That feedback is not going from, at a corporate company up to someone and then immediately stops. It's going literally as high as it possibly can go. But during that conversation, we of course asked Matt what was his vision for the brand. And he sees the North American market as exactly what it is, this incredible opportunity for them to continue to grow Riviera. Matt actually comes from a hotel background. So he was the CEO for hotels. And so one of his big focuses is branding. So all the way down to, the napkins, the tablecloths, the overall experience that you have. And right now you do have a great experience on Riviera, but it's still lacking a little bit of that brand association. And so he wants to build something where people don't just want to go on a river cruise, they want to go on Riviera for the Riviera experience. And so that's probably one of my favorite things that he is trying to build, is just a way to really, a loyalty program, have people who want to keep coming back. How do you have repeat guests? How do you honor the guests that really have sailed on you, and really start to hone in more on the guest and their experience? Outside of that, us being sort of the engine for growth, there are a lot of new, bright, shiny ideas that Matt has that I can guarantee you everybody will be excited about as they come out. But of course, I'm not able to share those yet. But as a regional sales director for Riviera, all I can say is that every time I've heard his conversations, heard him speak, I believe he only has the best intentions for this company, and that he is going to continue taking it to great places, and that we are just at the surface, not that we're just scratching the surface.
One of the interesting nods to what you're saying right there is the recent change of the rebrand from Riviera Cruises to Riviera Travel. So do you know much about what drove that change? And I know that you can't talk about a whole lot of the things that are coming into play, but there's some expansions there that's going to not only help expand them into different niches, but it's also going to come back and help Riviera River Cruises also from the expansion of some of your off-ship experiences. So is there any more detail that you can share about what that rebrand looked like and what was behind that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was Riviera River Cruises specifically, and in the U.S. that is, our primary focus. However, Riviera is also a tour company in the U.K. So we wanted to rebrand it as Riviera Travel because we are not just Riviera River Cruises. We do yacht cruises, and we do a number of different land tours, and we have a number of different packages and extensions. A lot of that is now being implemented into the U.S. So we are now able to offer what we call grand tours, which would be a package of 7 nights on land and then 7 nights on a river cruise ship, to give you even more of sort of that immersive experience, to get into that, to see some of those destinations that you want to spend more time in. On top of that, we are adding on a number of different pre and post extension options. So you would be able to, go to William and you would say, oh, I want to do the Blue Danube, but I would love to spend a couple extra days in Vienna or Budapest. We now have Budapest and Vienna extensions that you can just book entirely as a package together. And so that'll be super easy for you to just sort of have that all in one place. We are also a one-stop shop. So William, as you know, you can book your air, your flights, and your hotels through us if William wishes to do so. But a lot of that is the convenience of, William isn't just going to be booking your river cruise and telling you everything you need to know about your river cruise. He's taking care of everything. Your flights, your hotels, your transfers, he's doing all of it. And he has someone to turn to if he ever has any issues and needs any help, that will gladly pick up the phone whenever he needs something. So I would say that it's only going to continue to expand on that tour aspect. The grand tours are actually something that the UK can't sell. So it is only offered to any guest that's sailing from the US. So we're going to continue to do stuff like that as we continue to bridge that gap and try to find, that balance between the UK and how they operate and, how the US operates and what that US customer is looking for. And anytime you have any special ideas, don't be afraid to tell me, William. Please bring them all to me, because I'll just ring up Matt.
Yes, perfect. So we mentioned a couple of times earlier about the solo travelers, but I really do believe that for a solo traveler that Riviera should be the number one brand to start with and probably stick with. We do have a new ship. You mentioned 65 itineraries or 65 sailings next year that are solo only.
So 65 solo only sailings. So that's on a variety of different ships, on a variety of different itineraries. So we actually have a number of festive market sailings now that are also solo only. So we're only continuing to expand that because the demand is there. So much so that we've announced our very first solo only ship in addition to these solo itineraries. So we'll have a ship named the George Eliot, which is currently in our fleet, that is being rebranded as a solo-only ship. I get asked all the time, does that mean you are going to shrink the size of the cabins to make more solo cabins? No, we are keeping it as double occupancy cabins, which of course all of our solo travelers really love. at the end of the day, a lot of those solo travelers go and they tell others about their experience. And then, of course, they continue to come back because they don't want to pay extra. So having that no single supplement on every single solo cruise is a very big benefit.
It's been a huge deal. I've had some travelers that have come back from the solos and they just almost in tears. They had such an amazing time. They made some new friends. And he comes back to me and gives me 2 more dates for future solo sailings that the friends that he met, we're all going to meet up again and sail on forward. So don't be shocked if it doesn't become an addicting experience. So it's been great so far. Yeah. So Riviera is a UK-based brand. They've been in the UK for decades and decades with a large British passenger mix over those years. Recently coming to America, what should an American traveler expect in terms of onboard culture and kind of the mix between the Brits and the Americans as on board? I know that that's going to continue to change year over year, but what does that mix look like for 2026?
So I would say at this current point in time, on average, it's about 60% or 55% Brits, and then I would say roughly 40% US. Now that, of course, varies on every single sailing. We do a lot of groups. So a lot of the times that number is actually entirely different and it's flip-flopped because we have such large groups sailing out of the US. It is a continuous work in progress on figuring out the best ways to cater to both. Because as you can imagine, the British have a different style of how they dine, what they expect of service. And so one of my favorite things about Riviera is they are actively trying very hard to acknowledge everything that the U.S. customer needs, but they don't want to destroy, of course, any of their relationships and the brand that they've built in the U.K. So even in just the last couple months, from dinner serving sizes, they will specifically say sometimes the UK, they don't want they very honestly, extremely small serving sizes that are brought out like this. And they got some feedback that they don't want to eat that fast. And they want more food, and not even like that much food. They just wanted more. So they actually have gotten to the point where very quickly they were able to implement ways to satisfy both by saying, hey, just please let us know if you would like larger servings because we want to be, it's still a learning experience, but they're asking because they want to cater to the U.S. Customer as best as possible. And, they're not going to wait on you hand and foot necessarily, but that's because they are used to British not asking for that, but they want to support you and they want to provide that customer service. They just don't know necessarily to do it on their own. So if you just go, and they will come right over to you, they'll know your name. Our crew, I can't even say the amount of things that people say about our crew. It is incredible. Our cruise directors are incredible. So in terms of that experience, I mean, it's going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to change. Sometimes there are mean Americans, sometimes there are mean Brits, but at the end of the day, everybody gets along, and we are all trying our best to listen to both sides to continue to evolve with our customer.
And you're kind of paid to say that and have that bias, which is understandable. But I will say from our experience on the Riviera ship, they did an amazing job. I thought the team was very welcoming. And, the expo was largely for American travel advisors that were trying to learn more about each of the brands. And it was just really a spectacular experience compared to some of the other experiences we had on some of our other ships. So you're required to say it. I'm not, so we can leave it at that point.
But yes, thank you.
Perfect. Well, Sydney, I want to thank you very much for taking your time out today. I know that your time is incredibly valuable. I think that a lot of our viewers enjoyed hearing about Riviera for probably the first time today. This is part of the River Brand Conversation Series we're going to be having here on River Cruise Experts. We've got several more of these scheduled over the next few months. And if you would, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below so you'll be in tune to the new conversations that are going to be coming in play. If your Riviera specifically caught your attention, or if you realize that these brands haven't been something you need to give some consideration to, reach out. We're more than happy to visit with you. Again, free consultation, no sales pitch, just an honest conversation about what's right for you. So again, Sydney, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for everybody for watching.
To be here.